He promised 100% profit. It was all a scam. Imagine this. You're struggling to get ahead. Bills keep coming, opportunities feel limited, and every day looks exactly like the last. Then suddenly, someone appears with an offer that sounds like it could change everything. He tells you he can double your money in just 90 days. No complicated process, no stress, no real risk. Just profit. Simple, fast, guaranteed. At first, it sounds ridiculous. Impossible. But then you hear stories. Real people, just like you, are getting paid. Not small amounts, but huge returns. You see the excitement, the confidence, the proof. And slowly, your doubt begins to fade. You start to think, what if it's real? That's exactly how it started, and that's how thousands of people were pulled into one of the most infamous financial scams in history. This is the story of Charles Ponzi, before the fame, before the money, before the headlines that would make his name unforgettable. Ponzi was just a young man with big dreams and very little to show for them. He was born in 1882 in Italy, into a family that had once lived comfortably. There had been wealth, status, and stability at one point, but by the time Ponzi grew up, that world had disappeared. What remained were stories. Stories of how things used to be. Stories of success that no longer existed. And those stories shaped him in a powerful way. He didn't want to build a simple life. He didn't want to slowly climb his way up. He wanted to restore something. He wanted wealth, recognition, and success, and he wanted it quickly. So in 1903, like many others chasing opportunity, he left Italy and traveled to the United States. He arrived with almost nothing. A small amount of money, no real connections, and no clear plan. Just belief, but belief doesn't pay bills. Reality was harsh. Life in America wasn't welcoming or easy. Ponzi struggled almost immediately. He took whatever jobs he could find, working as a dishwasher, a waiter, and a laborer. The work was exhausting, the pay was low, and progress felt non-existent. Every day was about survival. Not success. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And still, nothing changed. He remained stuck in the same cycle, working hard but getting nowhere. Watching others move forward while he stayed in place. At some point, frustration turned into desperation, and desperation changes how people think. Ponzi didn't want to wait anymore. He didn't want slow progress or small improvements. He wanted a breakthrough. Something big. Something fast. Something that would finally take him out of the life he was trapped in. He eventually found work at a bank in Montreal, and for a moment, it seemed like things might finally improve. But what he saw there would leave a lasting impression. The bank was not operating honestly. It was using money from new deposits to pay off older debts, creating the illusion that everything was stable and successful. It wasn't. The system eventually collapsed, but Ponzi noticed something important before it did. He saw how easy it was to create the appearance of success, even when there was none. That idea stayed with him. He didn't stay clean for long. Desperation crept back in, and before anyone could stop him, he crossed the line, forging checks, chasing quick money like it could fix everything. It didn't. He was caught. Prison doors slammed shut behind him, and when they finally opened, the world waiting outside felt even colder than before. No opportunities, but something had changed. He had learned. Years passed. And Ponzi continued searching for an opportunity. He tried different ventures, different ideas, but nothing worked. Failure followed him everywhere. Most people would have given up by then, accepted their situation, and settled for less. But Ponzi didn't think like most people. He still believed that one day, everything would change, and then, finally, something did. It started with something so small that most people would have ignored it completely. A letter. Inside that letter was an international reply coupon, a simple tool used for prepaid postage between countries. To most people, it meant nothing, but Ponzi saw something different. He realized that because of differences in currency exchange rates, These coupons could theoretically be bought cheaply in one country and redeemed for more value in another. It was a form of arbitrage. Buy low in one place, exchange high in another. On paper, it sounded like a clever idea, but in reality, it had a major flaw. To make real money from it, you would need to buy and transport massive quantities of these coupons across countries. The logistics were overwhelming. The cost, the time, the coordination, it simply wasn't practical. It wouldn't work. But Ponzi wasn't focused on whether it would work, he was focused on whether people would believe it could work, and that changed everything. Instead of building a real operation, he built a story. He began telling people that he had discovered a secret system, a loophole that allowed him to generate massive profits quickly. He explained it with confidence, using just enough detail to sound legitimate, but not enough to be questioned deeply, and then he made an offer: invest with him, and he would return 50% profit in 45 days, or 100% in 90 days. It sounded unbelievable, but it also sounded irresistible. At first, only a few people were willing to take the risk. They invested small amounts, testing whether it was real. And then Ponzi did something that changed everything. He paid them, exactly as promised, with profit. That one move created trust, and trust spreads faster than anything else. Those early investors became proof. They told others about their experience. Friends told friends, families told neighbors, and the story began to grow. More people invested, and Ponzi continued paying returns, using money from new investors to pay the earlier ones. The system was simple, but incredibly effective. As long as new money kept coming in, everything looked real, and soon, the growth became unstoppable. People lined up outside his office every day. Not just a few people, but thousands. Some waited for hours just for the chance to invest. They brought everything they had. Life savings, borrowed money, funds meant for businesses or homes. They weren't thinking about risk. They were thinking about opportunity, and Ponzi gave them exactly what they wanted to see. At his peak, he was making millions of dollars a day. The volume of money was so large that it became difficult to manage. Banks struggled to process the deposits. His offices were overwhelmed with activity. He became famous. Newspapers covered his story, often portraying him as a financial genius. People admired him. He became a symbol of success, especially to immigrants who saw him as proof that it was possible to rise from nothing to everything. Ponzi embraced the image. He wore expensive suits, lived in luxury, and enjoyed the attention. He bought a mansion and lived a life that most people could only dream of. To the outside world, everything about him represented success, but behind the scenes, the reality was very different. There was no real investment, no massive coupon operation, no system generating profit. Everything depended on new money coming in, and that kind of system is fragile, because it only works as long as people believe. The moment doubt appears, everything begins to fall apart, and eventually, it did. Journalists started asking questions. Financial experts began looking into his claims. The numbers didn't make sense. To sustain his operation, Ponzi would have needed more international reply coupons than actually existed in the world. It wasn't just unlikely. It was impossible. As this information spread, people began to worry. Investors who once felt confident started to feel nervous. And once that feeling spreads, it doesn't stop. People began withdrawing their money. At first, it was manageable, but then it grew, and grew, until it became a flood. The system couldn't handle it, because the money wasn't there, it had already been used. The collapse was fast and brutal. Within days, everything fell apart. The illusion was gone, the truth was exposed. Charles Ponzi was arrested and charged with fraud. The aftermath was devastating. Thousands of people lost everything. Life savings, homes, businesses, futures. Entire families were affected. The emotional damage was just as severe as the financial loss. Ponzi, once admired and celebrated, became a symbol of deception. He spent years dealing with the consequences of his actions. Eventually, he was deported, his life ending far from the wealth he once controlled, but his impact didn't disappear. Instead, it became a warning, a blueprint, a system that would be repeated over and over again. Today, we call it a Ponzi scheme, and despite everything we know, despite history, despite awareness, these schemes still exist, because the promise is the same: easy money, fast returns, no risk. And as long as people continue to believe in that promise, stories like this will continue to happen. The story of Charles Ponzi is not just about a scam, it's about human nature, it's about belief, and it's about how easily the illusion of success can be created. And how quickly it can disappear. If you enjoyed this story, make sure you subscribe to Rise and Ruin, where we uncover the truth behind power, money, and the people who had it all and lost everything. From billionaire downfalls to shocking scandals and untold controversies, every story has a rise. And every empire has its ruin. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story, because the next rise could already be on its way to ruin.